Hey everyone! My name is Ben, and you're listening to A Daily Dose of English. This is a short, simple podcast that you can listen to every day to improve your English. You can find the transcripts for all episodes and more on benslanguagelab.com. I'm glad you could make it today. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the American accent. How fun! I'm actually really excited about this episode because it's number 150 and I get to talk a little bit about my accent, because I'm not actually talking about all American accents. As we've discussed before, there are actually hundreds, if not thousands, of pretty distinct dialects and accents that are used all across the United States. And so I actually want to talk a little bit more specifically about my accent, and then also general American English, which is an idealized version of the American accent. So let me start a little bit with my accent. So as you might hear, I have a fairly standard American accent. If you think of an American accent, you very well might just think of how I sound. Because I have a sort of a Western American accent that has no really obvious distinguishing features. I do actually have plenty in my own accent and dialect, but part of the reason that I specifically have fewer distinguishing features than many other Americans, even from the same place I am, is that I have done some training and I've spoken with people from all over the world even, and so I've kind of accidentally removed my regionalisms a bit. Not always, not everywhere. I definitely still have a specific North American, yet Pacific Northwestern accent, but that's why it's a little bit less obvious than with some people. And so quickly to talk about the general American English, which is the most common way to refer to this generalized accent. And the first thing I want you to know is that it doesn't really exist. Nobody actually uses general American English exactly as it exists unless you are trained to do it and you use it on like the news or whatever it is. It is sort of an average of a lot of different accents in the US. Not all of them. It is primarily focused on essentially white people English, because the U.S. is a very it's okay. It's a racist past, but it's very divided along race lines, especially with skin color, and the predominant English is white American English. It is seen as the higher profile. That's not the right word. The higher. Oh, what's the word? Not class either. It's like when you prestige, the higher prestige accent of the U.S. And that is just sort of how it is, which is probably a little bit too bad, because a lot of the other accents and dialects from other groups of people are very interesting and very rich. Especially there's some, if you look up some good videos online about, for example, Black English or African American English, there's a lot of really cool features that have been taken from other languages, especially from West African languages, that make a very unique English dialect that actually has a lot more grammatical features that my English, for example, just completely lacks. So I definitely don't want you to go out thinking that the English that I speak is necessarily any better or more complex or anything like that. That just isn't true. It's just the English that I speak. So, getting into the English that I do speak, my vowels are pretty normal for the U.S. Nowadays, especially for my age. There are a couple things that I want to point out that are interesting. Nothing incredible about E or I, a, ah. Those are all pretty normal. The one that is kind of interesting is the aw sound that I have. There is no distinction between aw and ah, which is the caught merger. And so that's when you say the word, I think we've talked about this also in the past, where you say the word cot, like C-O-T, a little bed that you sleep in, and to catch, I caught the ball. Those have the exact same pronunciation in my dialect. And that's very common for pretty much everybody under like 50 or something in the US. Some other ones are the ooh sound being very liquidy. Ooh has that just very moving sound. But there are a couple things going on in the consonants that I think are interesting. Although actually I just realized I jumped over something. And the last one that you might have noticed is the O sound in go is actually very open, especially in my dialect. Go, it starts out there, go instead of go. And ow is very, very fronted to become ow instead of ow. So how now, brown cow, in my dialect is very much how now, brown cow. But I is not changed. So I, how, have different starting vowels there, which I think is cool, but it's a little annoying to learn, I guess. The other thing that I wanted to mention is the oor sound not existing. So instead of saying tour or poor, I would say tour and poor. And that's again very common for people under a certain age, probably around like 50. Like my parents don't do it either, or they do the same thing as I do, but they're from the same-ish region that I am. So yeah, that oor is definitely lost. So any word that used to have oor has either become ooer, like two things, ooer, toer, or has become or. So toer, pour, Coors, like that. That's a Coors Light is a. I said oors. That's interesting. Coors, Coors, whatever. That's a brand of beer. But anyways, moving on. Because the actual interesting thing about my accent, I think, is in some of the vowel changes before certain consonants. So the consonants are mostly normal. There's nothing really interesting. The L sound and the nasal sound, so the those things will change some pronunciations. And is there anything else? Maybe we'll see. But the big one is that I have is called Canadian raising. And so that's where an I sound comes before a quiet, unvoiced sound like s or f. I instead of saying I say I. So I don't say high school, I say high school. High school. High, not high. Hike, but not, it was hige isn't a word. Height, hide, height and hide. There we go. That's a good one. So height and hide. Height, hide. Those are two different sounding words. Or spider, spider and no, that's also, what was the example that I used? Rider? Oh, rider and writer. That's the example. Sorry. Trying to remember, because spiter isn't a word, so it would be spiter. I guess it is a word. Someone who spites, a spider and a spider. Whatever. But the actual example is writer and rider. So a rider is someone who rides a horse, and a writer is someone who writes. You might not be able to hear, but there are slightly different vowels that I have in rai and rye. Rider, writer. And that's a pretty common thing in Oregon, Washington, and lots of Canada, actually. Canada also has it in some other vowels, which is where you get things like house instead of house, instead of house, or sorry instead of sorry. Their vowels get a little bit raised in front of some other things and some other words. It's not as obvious as you might hear in some like Canadian people trying to like sound more Canadian. Like almost nobody says sorry and house and boat, or boat isn't one, right? Boat. No, it's about. Yeah, that's what it was. A boot. That's what it is. A boot. Nobody says a boot, but they do say about, which is a little bit different than about. But anyways, sorry, I just punched you in the microphone. I'm running out of time, so I don't think I'm going to get into actual like general American English. But honestly, it's not that different from my dialect. It's actually pretty close. There are some like this differences that I just went through don't really happen. But Yeah. The other thing I do want to mention, though, that I think is important is the L sound, because this is also fairly common in lots of general American English. But when O comes before an ol sound, like in bowl, it kind of gets this very dark, rounded sound. Bowl, a bowl of soup, a bowl, or you want to go bowling. Those as a very different sound than bowl. Bowl sounds very fancy and weird. This also can come into some other random words. Like I said the word both with sort of this weird L sound in there, which people point out and make fun of, but it is relatively normal. There's also I've also mentioned before, some dialectical differences in some phrasings and some words that I say. For example, in my dialect, it's perfectly normal to say that you did something on accident. Oh, I'm sorry, I did that on accident, right? I didn't mean to. But the correct one in most of the U.S. is by accident. You can't say on accident. That's weird. You have to say by accident. But for pretty much everybody that I know, you can say on accident. Why not? It's fine. So those are some interesting things. There's also a bunch of little words that are a little bit more dialectical, but I don't think it's that really worth mentioning. Let me just Google really quick before I end this. I know it's going to be a long episode. I hope you don't mind. Pacific Northwestern English. I can't spell English. Haha. Pacific Northwestern English. Let's see what it says in here to see if there's anything interesting about my dialect. See if there's anything in here. Vowel shifts, yeah, that's what I do. Before the rang. Okay. Oh, this is something I've noticed, but I don't do. The a sound before ng can change to become rain. So I like the phone rang instead of the phone rang. The phone rang. I don't do that. That sounds very strange to me, but I've definitely heard it from lots of people. Yeah, this is the sand and pants. That's definitely something I do. That av to air, but that's a very common thing in a lot of the U.S. Prenasal, closed central vowel. Looking at trying to see if there's anything else interesting in here. Yeah, I don't do this. This is a little more Canadian to say boat becoming boat and bait becoming bait. That's probably more rural, where people don't really live in cities. But it also seems to be not super common. Oh yeah, by the way, there's lots of similarities with Californian English as well, even though it's pretty further south. That's just because the west coast of the US is a lot younger and a lot more connected to each other. Yeah, that's pretty much everything here. There's some people that have interesting. Bull. Yeah, okay, the bull merger looks to be a pretty small rural thing as well, but people saying the word bull like a big cow? Yeah, they're cows, right? And the bull as the same. So bull would be the same. So bull. I don't do that. And then yeah, there's also some words that are from this area. That are from where I'm from. So cougar is apparently a word from this region. Spendy. Oh, I didn't know that was a regionalism. Spendy is something that's expensive. Potato bug is a kind of bug, apparently called a woodlouse is the official term, but yeah, potato bug. Huh. Interesting. I've known that. But yeah, I don't see really anything else interesting in this article. So that's apparently everything. There's nothing else interesting about my dialect of English. But anyways, I know this has been a 15-minute episode. Oh my God. Well, I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you learned something new. And let me know down below in the comments, what do you think of my dialect of English? And I'll see you again tomorrow for another episode. Have a good one. Bye-bye.